What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about version control. Specifically, what it is, how it works, the benefits of it, different types of version control, and why developers use it. So we got a lot to learn today, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, let's talk about what version control is. Version control is a fundamental tool in software development that allows software developers to manage their code changes over time. Version control basically keeps changes to a file or set of files so that you can recall them or reuse them later. Examples of version control being used in real-world tools include Dropbox, Google Docs, and even Git, which is probably the most popular among software developers. Each of these tools give users the option to store different versions of a particular file and or image depending on what they're doing, and are able to recall those versions or reuse those versions as they see fit. Now that we've given an overview about what version control is, let's talk about how it works. For us developers, our source code is like a well taken care of car. We want to keep it clean, we want to keep it running so that we can continuously move forward with our product. Version control acts as a safety net for that so that we can prevent unwanted changes or issues from being brought on to our car. You want to keep the car moving at all costs, and version control allows us to keep our cars safe and well taken care of so that we can continuously move our product or our code forward. Version control keeps track of changes in what we call a repository. A repository is simply a database of changes. So since we have a repository storing all changes made to the code at a given time, we're able to see if there's a problem that has been introduced recently, what was the version number, who introduced it. All of that information is available through the repository, or repo for short. Let me quickly give you an example of version control that you've used before, probably without even realizing it. Let's say, for example, you're working on your resume for 2023. You currently have your original copy of your 2022 resume, and as you're making changes for 2023, you don't want to overwrite your 2022 copy. You want to keep that for reference. So when you're finally done making changes to your resume, you decide to save it as 2023 resume instead of 2022. Therefore, keeping the original copy untouched and still the original way that you left it. That is an example of version control that you've probably used on the day-to-day without even realizing it. Now that we have gone over what is version control and how it works, let's talk about version control systems. A version control system is simply a kind of software that allows a development team to easily track, communicate, and look at the different changes that have been made to the source code, or as you're thinking back to our early example, changes that have been made to our car over time. There are a few different types of version control systems out there, but let's talk about the two most popular ones. The first one is a centralized version control system, and the second is a distributed version control system. A centralized version control system is based around the idea that there is a central location for your source code, typically on a server, and programmers or developers will typically commit or add their changes to this source code. Once the developer commits or adds this change to the central code, other developers can see this change and pull that change down into their working copy. Typical workflow in the central version control system would probably look something like this. You pull down the latest changes from the central server, you make your changes locally on your working copy, test them to make sure they work, and then you commit your changes back up to the central server where other developers can then review or pull down your copy and see if it works from their end. Some of the most popular centralized version control systems are CVS, Subversion, or SVN for short, and Perforce. A distributed version control system is just as the name states. It's distributed. It allows you to access the code or the source code from multiple locations, multiple computers, and is really useful if you want to collaborate remotely with other developers. In this system, developers would copy or clone the entire repository, meaning they would have all of the history and the metadata of the source project onto their own machine. In this system, when you retrieve the latest changes from the source project, it's called pulling. When you're ready to push a new change set to the source project, it's called pushing. There are a couple different advantages that working with a distributed version control system has over a centralized one. The first one being that you can commit all of your changes to your change sets locally and push when you're ready. So nobody else can see your changes that you've done locally until you push them up to the source project for review. Another advantage is everything except pushing and pulling can be done without an internet connection. So that means you can literally be coding and making changes on a plane with no connection and committing those changes locally, and when you're ready to push, when you have internet connection, you'll be able to do so. Lastly, since each developer on your team typically has a copy of the source project, it's easier to share changes with those developers for review without having to push your changes up for everyone else to see. Some of the most popular distributed version control systems that we use today are Git, of course, Mercurial, and Bazaar. Now, let's talk about the benefits that version control can bring to you and your team as a developer. One of the benefits of version control is collaboration, of course. As we seen earlier, it allows you to easily share your code with other developers on your team since they also have that code on their hard drive or their machine. You can talk about different ways to improve your code, issues that you've run into. It just makes the whole collaboration process that much easier. Another benefit that version control gives you is backup. So in the event that something goes wrong in your source code or production site, we're all humans at the end of the day, you always have a backup version that you can always revert back to in the event something goes wrong. For example, Apex Legends recently released a change to one of the characters that they said wasn't meant to come out just yet. So I'm pretty sure in their version control system, they reverted that change back to a previous version. And one of the last things I wanted to talk about was productivity. So working with version control allows many different developers on your team to simultaneously work on the same file, different portions of the file, or maybe the same parts of the file at the same time, since they're all working on their own working copy or local version. And it also gives you the power to resolve any conflicts that may arise in the code when you're working on the same file. So when each developer pushes up their change set to the main source code, you're able to see like, hey, my code is having some type of conflict with this other developer's code, and we can actually resolve that a lot easier than, trying to figure out what's going on when something breaks on the main site or main source code. Now that we've gone over everything, I hope you all can see the importance of version control and why it makes so much sense to use it as a software developer. It makes your team's life easier. It makes your life easier. It makes it easy to revert changes in the event of something breaking or some issue going on your main source code. Just being able to track the history of who committed what, who pushed what, who made this change, who added this change. It's just so helpful, and it makes your life so much easier. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you have a question on, or if there's anything that I missed. But yes, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and as always, do not forget to like and subscribe. More videos will be coming soon. Peace out.